Everyone loves a good comeback story. But what if that comeback included not just proving someone wrong, but transforming their doubt into something beautiful? That's exactly what happened when basketball legend Michael Jordan returned to his high school decades after a teacher told him he'd never amount to anything. Instead of holding a grudge, Jordan did something unexpected. He funded a state-of-the-art gymnasium named after the very teacher who doubted him. This is the story of harsh words, hidden motivation, and how one moment in a high school hallway changed everything. Michael Jordan leaned against the cold metal lockers at Emsley A. Laney High School in Wilmington, North Carolina. His head hung low, and hot tears threatened to spill from his eyes. The hallway was nearly empty now. Most students had gone home, but Michael couldn't bring himself to leave yet. Not when the pain of rejection felt like a basketball had slammed right into his chest. Coach Clifton Pop. Herring's words still rang in his ears. "Michael, I'm sorry, but you didn't make varsity this year." It was 1978, and Michael was only a sophomore. At 5'10", he was shorter than most of the varsity players. He knew that, but he had worked so hard all summer, shot baskets until his arms ached, ran drills until his legs felt like jelly. And still, it wasn't enough. He wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his blue and gold Laney High School sweatshirt. The worst part wasn't even getting cut. It was knowing that his friend Leroy Smith had made the team instead. Leroy was 6'7", nearly a foot taller than Michael, and that height advantage had been enough. "Michael, are you still here?" He quickly straightened up, not wanting anyone to see him crying. But it was too late. Ms. Winifred Patterson, his math teacher, was walking down the hallway with a stack of papers tucked under her arm. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in its usual tight bun, and her glasses sat perched on the end of her nose. "School ended an hour ago," she said, stopping in front of him. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed his red-rimmed eyes. "Is everything all right?" Michael wanted to lie, to say everything was fine, but the lump in his throat made it hard to speak. "I didn't make varsity," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Patterson's expression softened, but only slightly. She had been teaching at Laney for 15 years and had seen hundreds of teenage disappointments. "Basketball," she said, nodding as if that explained everything. "Well, perhaps this is a blessing in disguise." Michael looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Ms. Patterson shifted the papers in her arms and fixed him with a serious look. "Basketball won't get you anywhere in life, Michael. You'd better focus on something else." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Worse than not making the team. Worse than seeing his name missing from that list. But some people just aren't meant for sports, Ms. Patterson continued, her voice firm but not unkind. "Your grades in my class show you have a good mind. Use it." Michael stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. Basketball was everything to him. Ever since he was little, shooting hoops with his older brother Larry in their backyard, he had dreamed of being a great player. "I can get better," he said. "I'll grow taller. I'll practice more." Ms. Patterson sighed. "Michael, I'm just being realistic. Do you know how many boys dream of playing professional basketball? Thousands. And how many make it? A handful. Those are not good odds." She glanced at her watch. "I need to get these papers graded. Don't stay too late. The janitor will be locking up soon." With that, she continued down the hallway, the click of her sensible shoes echoing on the polished floor. Michael stood frozen in place. Ms. Patterson was smart. All the students knew that. She had gone to college and knew about the world in ways Michael didn't. What if she was right? He eventually pushed himself away from the lockers and walked slowly toward the exit. Outside, the autumn air felt cool on his hot face. The walk home to Gordon Road wasn't long, but today it felt like miles. When he finally reached the modest house where he lived with his parents, James and Dolores Jordan and his 4 siblings, Michael headed straight to the backyard. The basketball hoop his father had installed on the side of the garage was waiting for him. The familiar feel of the ball in his hands brought a small measure of comfort. He started shooting, one basket after another. The rhythm of it helped push away the doubts that Ms. Patterson's words had planted. "Michael, dinner's ready," his mother called from the back door. "Coming," he replied, but took 3 more shots first. At the dinner table, his parents noticed his unusual silence. "Something wrong with the food?" his father asked, noticing Michael pushing his green beans around the plate. "No, sir," Michael replied quietly. "Then, what's wrong?" His mother pressed gently. Michael put down his fork. "I didn't make varsity." The table fell silent. His brother Larry looked away, uncomfortable. Everyone knew how much Michael had wanted this. "Coach picked Leroy instead," Michael added. "Because he's taller." James Jordan nodded thoughtfully. "Well, height is important in basketball. And Miss Patterson said I should focus on something else anyway," Michael continued, the words tumbling out now. "She said basketball won't get me anywhere in life." His father's expression hardened slightly. "Did she now?" "She said, I have a good mind, and should use it instead." Dolores reached over and patted Michael's hand. "You do have a good mind, Michael. There's nothing wrong with studying hard." "But I want to play basketball," Michael insisted. After dinner, Michael couldn't sleep. The basketball under his bed seemed to call to him. Around midnight, he slipped out of his room, grabbed the ball, and headed outside. The only light came from the moon and the dim glow from a neighbor's porch. It was enough. Michael began to shoot again, the thump of the ball against the backboard a steady rhythm in the quiet night. "What's eating you, son?" Michael turned to see his father standing there in his bathrobe, watching him. "I can't stop thinking about what Miss Patterson said," Michael admitted. "About basketball not getting me anywhere." James Jordan walked over and put his hand on his son's shoulder. In the moonlight, his father's face looked serious. "Some people will always tell you what you can't do," he said. "Your job is to show them what you can do." Michael nodded, feeling something shift inside him. The hurt was still there, but now there was something else too. Determination. A fire. "I'm going to make the team next year," he said. "And I'm going to be the best player Laney has ever seen." His father smiled. "I believe you will." He yawned and turned back toward the house. "Now, come inside and get some sleep. You can practice more tomorrow." But Michael took one more shot before following his father inside. The ball arced through the night air and swished perfectly through the hoop. Ms. Patterson's words still echoed. In his mind, "Basketball won't get you anywhere in life, Michael." He would prove her wrong. He would prove everyone wrong. Michael just didn't know yet how far that promise would take him, or how those crushing words would fuel one of the greatest sports careers in history. Summer in North Carolina was hot and sticky, but Michael barely noticed. Every morning, he woke up at 6 a.m. to run 2 miles before the worst heat of the day hit. Then, after helping his mom with chores, he would spend hours on the driveway court, shooting baskets until the sun went down. "You're going to wear a hole in those sneakers," his mother said one evening as Michael came in for dinner, sweat dripping down his face. "Then I'll need new ones," he replied with a grin. Something had changed in Michael since that day in the hallway. The hurt from Coach Herring's decision and Ms. Patterson's words had hardened into determination. He had made the junior varsity team and played well, but that wasn't enough. He wanted varsity. He wanted to be the best. And then something miraculous happened. That summer between sophomore and junior year, Michael grew and grew. By the time school started again in the fall of 1979, he had shot up nearly 4 inches. When tryouts came, Coach Herring couldn't help but notice the difference. Not just in Michael's height, which was now around 6'2", but in his skill level. The endless hours of practice had paid off. Michael moved differently on the court. Quicker, more confident, more creative. "Jordan!" Coach Herring called after tryouts. "You've been putting in work." "Yes, sir," Michael replied, trying to keep his face neutral even though his heart was racing. 2 days later, the varsity list was posted. This time, Michael Jordan's name was at the top. Junior year was a revelation. Michael averaged 25 points per game, becoming a star almost overnight. Students who had hardly noticed him before were suddenly asking for his autograph in the hallways. The local newspaper started sending reporters to games to write about the explosive young talent at Laney High. Through it all, Michael kept his grades up. Not because he had taken Ms. Patterson's advice about focusing on academics instead of basketball, but because he knew he needed both to succeed. Speaking of Ms. Patterson, she had noticed Michael's rise on the court. How could she not? The whole school was buzzing about him. But, in her classroom, she treated him the same as always, fairly, but with high expectations. One day after class, as Michael was packing up his books, she stopped him. "I see you're doing well on the court," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Yes, ma'am," Michael replied politely. "The other teachers can't stop talking about you in the faculty lounge." She paused, studying him. "But I notice your math grade has slipped a bit this quarter." Michael shifted uncomfortably. It was true. With all the attention and pressure of being the team's star, he had let a few homework assignments slide. "I'll do better," he promised. Ms. Patterson nodded. "See that you do." Then, after a moment, she added, "Just remember what I said. Basketball is fine for high school, but it's not a real future." The words stung just as much as they had that day in the hallway. Maybe even more so now, because Michael had started to dream bigger. North Carolina universities were sending scouts to his games. People were talking about college scholarships. He looked Ms. Patterson in the eye. "I'm going to make it to the NBA, Ms. Patterson." She smiled sadly. "I hope life doesn't disappoint you, Michael." Something inside him burned hot at her words. Not anger exactly, but a fierce resolve. "One day, I'll come back and show you how wrong you were." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Senior year brought even more success. Michael averaged 29.2 points per game, 11.6 rebounds, and 10.1 assists. He was selected for the McDonald's All-American team and invited to play in the prestigious Dapper Dan Roundball Classic in Pittsburgh. College scouts were no longer just from North Carolina. They came from all over the country to see the high-flying guard who could seemingly defy gravity. In the end, Michael chose the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It was close to home, had a great basketball program under legendary Coach Dean Smith, and offered the education his parents insisted he get. The night before graduation, Michael sat on the front porch steps with his father. "I'm proud of you, son," James Jordan said, looking out at the quiet street. "Not just for the basketball, but for how you handled yourself." "Thanks, Dad." "You remember what Ms. Patterson told you? About basketball not getting you anywhere?" Michael nodded. How could he forget? "Keep that with you," his father advised. "Not to make you angry, but to remind you that there will always be people who don't believe in your dream. Your job is to prove them wrong. Michael looked up at the stars, thinking about UNC, about the future, about the NBA dreams that now seemed possible. I will, he said quietly. I promise. He didn't know then that he would more than fulfill that promise. He couldn't have imagined. The 6 NBA championships, the 5 MVP awards, the billions of dollars, or the global fame that awaited him. But the seed was planted, and it was watered with those crushing words from Ms. Patterson, growing stronger every time he remembered. Them, the University of North Carolina campus, felt huge compared to Laney High School. Michael walked to his first practice at Carmichael Arena with butterflies in his stomach. The other freshmen looked just as nervous, but the returning players strolled in with the easy confidence of veterans. Coach Dean Smith was a legend in college. Basketball. When he spoke, everyone listened. Even the assistant coaches fell silent. Basketball is a team game, Coach Smith told them on that first day. I don't care how good any one of you thinks you are. Here, you play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the one on the back. Michael soaked up every word. Coach Smith was different from Coach Herring, more strategic, more precise. He didn't just want players to perform, he wanted them to understand the game at a deeper level. Jordan! Coach Smith called out during one practice. What were you thinking on that last play? Michael explained his reasoning for the move he'd made. Coach Smith nodded. Good instinct. Now, let me show you how to make it better. Those moments were gold to Michael. Each criticism was a chance to improve, not a judgment of his worth. He began to understand that the right kind of challenge could lift you up instead of tearing you down. Still, college basketball was a different world. Michael wasn't automatically the star like he had been at Laney. He was a freshman on a team full of talented players, including James Worthy, who would later become an NBA Hall of Famer. Don't try to do too much, Coach Smith advised Michael after he forced some shots in an early season game. Trust your teammates. Your time will come. Michael listened. He worked on his defense, his passing, his understanding of the Tar Heels' system. He earned his starting spot not just with raw talent, but with his willingness to learn and adapt. By the time the NCAA tournament rolled around in his freshman year, Michael had become an integral part of the team. The Tar Heels made it all the way to the championship game against Georgetown, led by their center, Patrick Ewing. With 17 seconds left in the game, UNC was down by 1 point. Coach Smith called a timeout. Jordan, he said in the huddle, if the ball comes to you, take the shot. Michael nodded, trying to look calmer than he felt. When the play unfolded, the Georgetown defense collapsed on James Worthy. The ball came to Michael on the left wing. Just as Coach Smith had predicted, without hesitation, Michael rose up and released a smooth jump shot from about 16 feet away. Ball arced through the air and swished through the net with 15 seconds left on the clock. Georgetown had one more chance, but they couldn't score. The buzzer sounded, and the Tar Heels were national champions. Michael's teammates mobbed him on the court, lifting him onto their shoulders as confetti rained down. In that moment of pure joy, with the crowd roaring and his teammates celebrating, Michael had a sudden thought of Ms. Patterson. He wondered if she had seen the game, if she knew that the boy she had once doubted had just hit the winning shot in the NCAA championship. That night, back in his dorm room, still buzzing from the victory, Michael took out a piece of paper and began to write. Dear Ms. Patterson, today I hit the winning shot in the NCAA championship game. He wrote about the game, about how Coach Smith had trusted him with the final shot, despite him being just a freshman. He wrote about how he still remembered her words in the hallway that day, and how they had pushed him to work harder. But when he finished the letter, he didn't seal it in an envelope. He simply folded it and put it in his desk drawer. He wasn't ready to send it yet. There was still more to prove. Michael stayed at UNC for 2 more years, improving each season. By his junior year, he was averaging 19.6 points per game and was named College Player of the Year by the Sporting News. He was also selected as a first-team All-American. After 3 stellar years at UNC, Michael made the difficult decision to leave college early and enter the 1984 NBA draft. His parents weren't thrilled. They had always emphasized the importance of education, but they supported his choice. "Just promise me you'll finish your degree someday," his mother said. "I will," Michael assured her. And eventually he would keep that promise, returning to UNC years later to complete his bachelor's degree in geography. The 1984 NBA draft changed the course of basketball history, though few realized it at the time. The Houston Rockets selected Hakeem Olajuwon with the first pick. The Portland Trail Blazers chose Sam Bowie second, and with the third pick, the Chicago Bulls selected Michael Jordan from the University of North Carolina. Chicago was a world away from Wilmington. The city was bigger, louder, faster than anything Michael had experienced. The Bulls had been struggling for years, finishing the previous season with just 27 wins and 55 losses. The team needed a savior, but few expected a rookie to fill that role. Michael's first game as a Bull was against the Washington Bullets. He scored 16 points, showed flashes of brilliance, and gave Chicago fans a glimpse of what was to come. As the season progressed, Michael's explosive playing style electrified crowds both at home and on the road. He averaged 28.2 points per game, an astonishing number for a rookie. He could jump higher, move faster, and hang in the air longer than seemed humanly possible. "It's like he has rocket boosters in those shoes," one commentator remarked after Michael soared through the air for a particularly spectacular dunk. Speaking of shoes, during his rookie season, Nike signed Michael to a deal to create a new line of basketball sneakers called Air Jordans. The red and black shoes violated the NBA's uniform rules, and the league fined Michael $5,000 each time he wore them. Nike happily paid the fines, recognizing the incredible marketing opportunity. By the end of his first season, Michael had earned Rookie of the Year honors and was selected for the All-Star game. The Bulls improved to 38 wins, making the playoffs even though they lost in the first round to the Milwaukee Bucks. Back in Wilmington, Ms. Patterson saw Michael on television. She watched with mixed emotions as her former student defied gravity and expectations. She began clipping newspaper articles about him and keeping them in a folder, though she told no one about this collection. One article particularly caught her attention. In it, a reporter asked Michael about his motivation. "I play to win," Michael was quoted as saying. "But I also play to prove something, to myself and to anyone who ever doubted me." Ms. Patterson read those words several times. She wondered if she was one of those doubters he was thinking of. She couldn't know then how deeply her words had embedded themselves in Michael's psyche, or how they would continue to drive him in the years to come. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Michael was just getting started. The championships, the MVP awards, the global fame, all of that was still in the future. But the foundation was being laid, one spectacular play at a time. And always, in the back of his mind, was that promise. "One day, I'll come back and show you how wrong you were." Success didn't come easily for Michael in Chicago, despite his individual brilliance. The Bulls improved with him on the team, but they weren't championship contenders yet. Each playoff appearance ended in disappointment. The biggest obstacle was the Detroit Pistons, a tough, physical team led by Isaiah Thomas. The Pistons had a special defensive strategy just for Michael. which sports writers called the Jordan rules. Whenever Michael had the ball, 2 or 3 Pistons players would surround him, bumping, pushing, and wearing him down. If Michael goes to the basket, put him on the floor, was one of their rules. They didn't want to hurt him, but they weren't going to let him fly through the air for easy dunks either. For 3 straight years, from 1988 to 1990, the Pistons eliminated the Bulls from the playoffs. After each defeat, Michael returned to the gym the next day, determined to get stronger and better. "Next year," he told reporters after another playoff loss to Detroit, "we'll be back next year." During those difficult years, Michael developed a reputation for being incredibly competitive. He hated losing more than he loved winning. His teammates sometimes found his intensity overwhelming, but they couldn't argue with his work ethic. Michael was always the first one at practice and the last to leave. "When people ask me if I'd rather be lucky or good," Michael once said, "I tell them I'd rather be prepared." That preparation paid off in his scoring. Michael won the NBA scoring title in 1987, 1988, 1989, and 1990, averaging over 30 points per game each season. He also improved his defense, winning Defensive Player of the Year in 1988. All the individual awards were nice, but Michael wanted a championship. He wanted to prove he could lead a team to the ultimate victory. In the summer of 1990, after another playoff defeat to the Pistons, Michael returned to Wilmington to visit his parents. While driving around his hometown, he passed by Laney High School and felt a sudden urge to stop. The building looked smaller than he remembered. Summer school was in session, and a few teachers were there preparing for the fall. Michael walked the familiar hallways, past his old locker, and found himself near Ms. Patterson's classroom. He paused outside the door, surprised to see her inside, writing math problems on the chalkboard. Her hair was grayer now, but she still had the same straight posture and serious expression. Michael knocked gently on the doorframe. "Ms. Patterson?" She turned, her eyes widening in recognition. "Michael Jordan. Well, this is a surprise." "I was in town visiting family," he said. "Thought I'd stop by." She gestured to a student desk. "Have a seat, though you might find it a bit small now." Michael folded his 6x6 frame into the desk, feeling like a time traveler returned to his past. The Maidan desk was indeed comically small for him now. "I've seen you play," she admitted after a moment. "You're quite good." Coming from Ms. Patterson, this was high praise. Michael felt a small glow of satisfaction. "But?" he asked, hearing the hesitation in her voice. "But nothing lasts forever," she said. "Even basketball careers end. Are you preparing for what comes after?" The satisfaction faded. After all these years, after all he had accomplished, she was still doubting him, still looking past his current success to point out future failures. "I've got to go," he said abruptly, rising from the desk. "Nice seeing you, Ms. Patterson." He left without waiting for her response, anger fueling his steps back to the car. As he drove away, he made another silent promise to himself. Next time he returned to Wilmington, there would be no doubt about his success, on or off the court. Back in Chicago, Michael channeled that frustration into his training. The Bulls had a new coach now, Phil Jackson, who had introduced a new offensive system called the triangle offense. It was designed to ensure the ball didn't just stay in Michael's hands, but moved around to all players. It was a system that required Michael to trust his teammates more. "Your greatness is unquestioned," Coach Jackson told him. "But to win championships, we need everyone to contribute." Michael listened. As incredible as he was, he had learned that one player couldn't beat an entire team like the Pistons alone. He needed help. Thankfully, he had Scottie Pippen, a versatile forward who had developed into an all-star. The Bulls also added key role players like John Paxson and Horace Grant. And with Phil Jackson's strategic mind guiding them, the team began to gel in a way they never had before. The 1990-91 season was magical. The Bulls won 61 games and breezed through the early playoff rounds. Then came the Eastern Conference Finals against their nemesis, the Detroit Pistons. This time was different. The Bulls swept the Pistons in 4 straight games. In the final game, when it became clear the Pistons were going to lose, several of their players walked off the court before the game ended, refusing to shake hands with the Bulls. "They quit," Michael said later. "We didn't just beat them, we broke their spirit." In the NBA Finals, the Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. It was a matchup of 2 of the game's biggest stars, but Michael's Bulls dominated, winning the series 4-1. When the final buzzer sounded, Michael clutched the game ball and fell to his knees on the court, overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down his face as his teammates celebrated around him. After 7 years in the NBA, after all the doubts and defeats, he was finally a champion. In the locker room, surrounded by champagne and jubilation, Michael held the championship trophy close. The journey wasn't over. There would be more championships to win, more doubters to prove wrong. But in that moment, he allowed himself to savor the victory. And somewhere in a folder in Ms. Patterson's desk in Wilmington, another newspaper clipping was about to be added. This one with a headline that even she couldn't doubt. "Jordan leads Bulls to NBA championship." One championship wasn't enough for Michael Jordan. Now that he had tasted victory, he wanted more. The 1991-92 season brought new challenges. Every team in the NBA was gunning for the Bulls, desperate to take down the champions. But Michael and his teammates were ready. They won 67 regular season games and stormed through the playoffs once again. In the finals, they faced Clyde Drexler and the Portland Trail Blazers. Before the series, some reporters suggested Drexler might be as good as Jordan. This bothered Michael, who took it as a personal challenge. In Game 1, Michael hit 6 three-pointers in the first half alone. After making one of them, he turned to the announcer's table and shrugged, as if to say, "I don't know why I'm so hot tonight." The Bulls won the series in 6 games, and Michael was named Finals MVP for the 2nd straight year. Back in Wilmington, Ms. Patterson added another clipping to her folder. The next season, 1992-93, the Bulls faced the Phoenix Suns in the finals. Led by Charles Barkley, who had won the regular season MVP award over Michael, the Suns were a dangerous team. But once again, Michael elevated his game when it mattered most. In a crucial Game 4, with the Bulls leading the series 2-1, Michael scored 55 points in a Bulls victory. The team went on to win the series in 6 games, completing their first three-peat. He'd won 3 championships in a row. Michael had proven himself not just as a scoring marvel, but as a winner. His competitive drive had transformed the Bulls from an average team into a dynasty. Off the court, Michael's fame grew to heights no basketball player had ever reached. His Air Jordan shoes had become a global phenomenon. He signed endorsement deals with major companies like Gatorade, McDonald's, and Hanes. His face appeared on billboards and television screens around the world. In the summer of 1992, Michael led the Dream Team, the United States Olympic basketball team, to a gold medal in Barcelona, Spain. Playing alongside legends like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Charles Barkley, Michael still stood out as the best player on the court. But as his star rose higher, Michael faced new kinds of pressure. Rumors about his gambling habits appeared in newspapers. Reporters followed him everywhere, intruding on his private life. The constant spotlight began to wear on him. Then, in July 1993, tragedy struck. Michael's father, James Jordan, was murdered while napping in his car at a rest stop in North Carolina. 2 teenagers were later convicted of the crime. Michael was devastated. He had been extremely close to his father, who had supported his basketball dreams from the beginning. James had been at nearly every important game of Michael's career, cheering from the stands. "He was my rock," Michael said in a rare emotional interview. "I talked to him about everything." 3 months after his father's death, Michael shocked the world by announcing his retirement from basketball. "I have nothing more to prove in basketball," he said at a packed press conference in October 1993. "My father always said it was important to use your skills in different areas to challenge yourself in new ways." What Michael revealed next stunned everyone even more. He was going to play professional baseball, fulfilling a dream his father had for him. He signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox organization, owned by Jerry Reinsdorf, who also owned the Bulls. "My dad always wanted me to play baseball," Michael explained. "This is for him." Michael spent the 1994 season with the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A minor league team. He batted .202 with 3 home runs and 51 RBIs in 127 games. Not terrible for someone who hadn't played baseball since high school, but far from the dominance he had shown in basketball. Meanwhile, the NBA continued without its biggest star. The Houston Rockets won the championship in 1994, led by Hakeem Olajuwon, the player chosen ahead of Michael in the 1984 draft. As the 1994-95 NBA season progressed, rumors began to swirl about Michael's return to basketball. The Bulls were struggling without him, and fans desperately wanted their hero back. Then, on March 18, 1995, Michael released a simple statement that sent shockwaves through the sports world. "I'm back." The news traveled quickly to Wilmington. Ms. Patterson heard it on her car radio while driving home from school. She smiled slightly, remembering the determined teenager who had once sat in her classroom, insisting he would make it to the NBA. Michael's return to the Bulls created a frenzy. His first game back was the most-watched regular-season NBA game in years. Though he showed some rust, wearing number 45 instead of his familiar 23, it was clear his competitive fire still burned bright. However, the Bulls lost in the playoffs that year to the Orlando Magic. Michael had returned, but he wasn't quite the same dominant force yet. He needed to get back into basketball shape, to regain the edge that had made him the best player in the world. That summer, Michael trained harder than ever. He also filmed the movie Space Jam, which required him to build a special basketball court where he could practice between filming scenes. When the 1995-96 season began, a new Michael Jordan emerged. He was stronger, more focused, and seemingly more determined than ever before. He had reclaimed his number 23 jersey, and with it, his identity as the game's greatest player. The Bulls that season were unstoppable. With Michael leading the way, they won an astonishing 72 games and lost only 10, setting a record for the best regular season record in NBA history at that time. Michael won his 4th regular season MVP award and led the league in scoring once again. In the playoffs, the Bulls steamrolled the competition. They reached the finals, where they faced the Seattle Supersonics, led by defensive star Gary Payton and high-flying forward Shawn Kemp. Though the Sonics put up a fight, winning 2 games in the series, the Bulls prevailed in 6 games. When the final buzzer sounded, Michael collapsed on the court, clutching the game ball and sobbing. It was Father's Day, and his thoughts were with his dad, who hadn't lived to see his return to glory. "This one was for him," Michael said afterward, his voice breaking with emotion. The next 2 seasons brought 2 more championships. In 1997, The Bulls defeated the Utah Jazz in the finals, with Michael hitting the famous flu game, playing brilliantly despite being so sick he could barely stand. In 1998, the Bulls faced the Jazz again. In the decisive Game 6, with the Bulls trailing by 1 point in the final seconds, Michael stole the ball from Karl Malone, dribbled down court, and hit the game-winning shot with 5.2 seconds remaining. It was the perfect ending to the Bulls' second three-peat. After that sixth championship, Michael retired for a second time. The Bulls' dynasty broke up, with Phil Jackson leaving to coach elsewhere and Scottie Pippen being traded. An era of basketball dominance had ended. Throughout these golden years, Michael never forgot Ms. Patterson's words. They continued to drive him, to push him, when others might have been satisfied with their accomplishments. Sometimes, when reporters asked what fueled his legendary competitive spirit, he thought of her but kept the story to himself. He had proven her wrong many times over, not just with his basketball success, but with his business acumen too. His Jordan brand, a division of Nike, had made him wealthy beyond imagination. He had endorsement deals, restaurants, and other investments that ensured his financial future was secure long after his playing days were over. In many ways, Michael had outgrown the need for Ms. Patterson's approval, and yet, a part of him still wondered if she had followed his career, if she had seen how far he had come from that tearful day in the hallway at Laney High. He would get his answer sooner than he expected, in the form of a letter that arrived. During the summer of 1998, just after his sixth and final championship with the Bulls, Michael sat on the deck of his Chicago home, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. The city was still celebrating the Bulls' sixth championship, but Michael's mind was already moving forward. At 35, he knew his playing days were numbered. Retirement loomed again, this time likely for good. His assistant brought out the day's mail, mostly congratulatory cards and business offers. But one envelope caught his eye. It was plain white, with a Wilmington, North Carolina return address. The handwriting was neat and precise, like something a teacher might use on a chalkboard. Michael opened it carefully and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Dear Michael," it began. He immediately recognized the writing. It was from Ms. Patterson. "I've followed your career with interest all these years. You've proven yourself not just as an athlete, but as a businessman and cultural influence. I was wrong about you." Michael's breath caught in his throat. He had imagined hearing these words for so long, but now that they were in front of him, he didn't know how to feel. "While I still believe education is important," the letter continued, "I failed to see that determination and hard work in any field can lead to success. I hope you can forgive an old teacher who meant well but lacked vision. Congratulations on all you've achieved. Sincerely, Winifred Patterson." Michael read the letter several times. It was the acknowledgement he had once craved, the vindication of all his hard work and success. Miss Patterson had finally admitted she was wrong. So why didn't it feel more satisfying? He folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. The truth was, he had moved beyond needing Ms. Patterson's approval. Her doubts had fueled him for years, pushing him to prove something not just to her, but to himself. Without realizing it, she had given him a gift, a chip on his shoulder that drove him to greatness. Michael never replied to the letter. What would he say? "Thank you for underestimating me? Thank you for the motivation your doubt provided?" It seemed petty somehow, and Michael had outgrown petty. Instead, he put the letter in a drawer in his home office, alongside other mementos from his journey, his first NBA contract, photos of championship celebrations, the box score from his 69-point game against Cleveland. A few months later, In January 1999, Michael announced his retirement from basketball for the second time. "This is it," he told the press. "I feel I have nothing left to prove on the basketball court." And it was true. He had more than proven himself as a player. He had 6 championship rings, 5 regular season MVP awards, 6 Finals MVP awards, and a scoring record that seemed untouchable. He had changed the game of basketball forever with his combination of athletic ability, skill, and competitive fire. But Michael Jordan was never one to rest on his laurels. Retirement from playing didn't mean retirement from life. He became a part owner and executive with the Washington Wizards basketball team. He expanded his business interests, growing the Jordan brand into a billion-dollar enterprise. He bought expensive cars and played high-stakes golf. And yet, something was missing. The competition, the challenge, the daily proving of oneself that had defined his life for so long, he missed it all terribly. In 2001, rumors began to swirl that Michael might return to basketball again, this time as a player for the Wizards. Most people dismissed the idea. He was 38 years old now, ancient by NBA standards. He had been away from the game for 3 years. The magic would surely be gone, but Michael couldn't resist the pull of competition. In September 2001, he confirmed the rumors. He was coming back again. This time, things were different. Michael was still good. He averaged over 20 points per game for the Wizards, but he was no longer the dominant force he had been with the Bulls. His team didn't make the playoffs, and flashes of the old Michael came less frequently. After 2 seasons with the Wizards, Michael retired for the third and final time in 2003. His playing career was truly over, but his impact on the game continued. The young players entering the NBA had grown up watching Michael, wearing his shoes, wanting to be like Mike. His influence could be seen in the play of stars like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, who studied his moves and tried to match his competitive intensity. As Michael moved into the next phase of his life, focusing on business and eventually becoming the owner of the Charlotte Hornets NBA team, Ms. Patterson's letter stayed in that drawer in his office. He rarely looked at it, but he never threw it away either. It was a reminder of where he had come from, of the doubts he had overcome, and of how far he had traveled from that tearful day in the hallway of Laney High School. What he didn't know was that someday, years later, he would have reason to remember Ms. Patterson again. And when that day came, he would finally understand why her letter had left him feeling strangely empty. Years passed. Michael settled into life after basketball. As owner of the Charlotte Hornets, previously the Bobcats, he brought professional basketball back to North Carolina. His Jordan brand continued to dominate the athletic shoe market, making him the first former athlete to become a billionaire. Life was good, if sometimes lacking the intensity of his playing days. Nothing could replace the rush of competing at the highest level, of having thousands of fans chanting your name. But Michael had found new challenges in business and ownership that satisfied some of that competitive drive. In the summer of 2015, Michael was in his office at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, reviewing scouting reports for the upcoming NBA draft. His assistant interrupted with a phone call. "It's the principal from Laney High School in Wilmington," she said. Michael took the call, curious. He hadn't been back to his old high school in years. "Mr. Jordan," said a woman's voice, "this is Principal Stephanie Bell from Laney High. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Not at all," Michael replied. "What can I do for you?" "Well, first, let me say what an honor it is to speak with our most famous alumnus." Michael smiled. He was used to such compliments now. "I'm calling because we have a situation here at Laney that I thought might interest you. Our gymnasium is in desperate need of renovation, The floor is warped in places, the bleachers are falling apart, and the locker rooms have serious plumbing issues. That doesn't sound good, Michael said. We've applied for funding from the district, but budgets are tight. When the school board suggested we look for private donors, your name naturally came up. Would you consider helping your alma mater? Michael didn't hesitate. I'd be happy to help, but I'd like to see the situation for myself first. I can drive down to Wilmington next week. That would be wonderful, Principal Bell said, barely containing her excitement. Should I prepare any special arrangements for your visit? No, nothing special. I'd prefer to keep it low-key. I just want to see the gym. A week later, Michael drove his sleek black Mercedes down the familiar roads of Wilmington. The city had grown since his childhood, with new shopping centers and housing developments sprawled where woods and fields had once been. But there were still places that looked just as he remembered. He reached Laney High School after hours, as planned. He didn't want a crowd or any media attention, just a quiet look at his old stomping grounds. An aging security guard was waiting at the main entrance. As Michael approached, the man's eyes widened in recognition. Well, I'll be Michael Jordan himself. What brings you back, son? Just wanted to see the old gym, Michael replied with a smile. The security guard introduced himself as Mr. Theo Jenkins. Been working here since before you were a student, he said proudly, unlocking the doors. Seen a lot of talent come through, but nobody like you. They walked through the quiet hallways. Trophy cases lining the walls displayed the school's athletic achievements over the decades. Michael paused at one that held memorabilia from his high school days. His jersey, photos of the team, newspaper clippings. Here we are, Mr. Jenkins said, pushing open the double doors to the gymnasium. Ain't much to see. Place is falling apart. Budget cuts, you know. The gym looked smaller than Michael remembered, but the memories came flooding back. This was where he had played after being cut from varsity, where he had practiced for hours when no one was watching, where his dream had begun, despite the doubts of others. The wooden floor was indeed warped in several places, with dark water stains marring the surface. The bleachers were missing seats, and one section appeared unusable. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the scoreboard looked like it belonged in a museum. When was the last renovation? Michael asked. Must be 20 years now, Mr. Jenkins replied. They replace things when they break, but there's never money for a proper update. As they walked around the court, Michael noticed a plaque on the wall listing teachers who had served Laney High for over 30 years. His eyes scanned the names and stopped at one. Winifred Patterson, 1965-2010. Is Ms. Patterson still around? Michael asked, trying to sound casual. Old Ms. Patterson? Sure is. Retired, but volunteers at the community center teaching math to kids. Still sharp as a tack at 78. Michael nodded, a plan forming in his mind. Mr. Jenkins, could you keep my visit between us for now? I'd like to help with the gym renovation, but I want to do it my way. Your secret's safe with me, the security guard promised. Though folks around here will be mighty excited when they hear Michael Jordan is helping Laney High. Back in his hotel room that night, Michael made some calls. First to his financial advisor, then to a construction company he had worked with on other projects. By morning, he had the beginnings of a plan. But there was one more piece to the puzzle. The community center was a simple brick building near downtown Wilmington. Michael found it easily and parked across the street, watching, as children and their parents entered for after-school programs. Around 4 p.m. he spotted her, an elderly woman with white hair and a slight stoop, but still with that unmistakable air of authority. Ms. Patterson was leaving the center after her tutoring session, carrying a worn leather satchel much like the one she had used during her teaching days. Michael took a deep breath and got out of his car. He followed her to a small cafe a block away, where she sat at a corner table with a cup of tea and a book. Ms. Patterson. She looked up, squinting through her glasses. Recognition dawned slowly on her face. Michael Jordan. My goodness. You have time for a cup of coffee? He asked. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please, join me. Michael ordered a coffee and sat down, suddenly feeling like a student again despite all his accomplishments. I'm surprised to see you back in Wilmington, Ms. Patterson said. What brings you here? Laney High School's gym needs renovation, Michael explained. The principal called me about helping. And will you? Yes, but I have an idea I wanted to discuss with you first. Ms. Patterson raised an eyebrow, curious. I got your letter, Michael said. Years ago. I wondered if you had, she replied. I never expected a response. You must be very busy. There was an awkward silence. 20 years ago, Michael had imagined this conversation going differently. He had pictured himself listing all his accomplishments, forcing Ms. Patterson to admit how wrong she had been. But now, sitting across from this elderly teacher who had once doubted him, he felt no desire for such petty revenge. I'm thinking of naming the renovated gym after you, he said finally. Ms. Patterson nearly choked on her tea. After me? But why? I discouraged you. Michael smiled. That's a conversation for another day. I just wanted to see if you'd be opposed to the idea. I'm flattered but confused, she admitted. Surely it should bear your name, not mine. My name is already on enough buildings, Michael said. This would be something different, something meaningful. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Miss Patterson still looked bewildered by his proposal. I look forward to hearing more about this, she said. Michael nodded. You will. Soon. Driving back to Charlotte that evening, Michael felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. The idea that had begun to form in his mind during his visit to Laney was now taking definite shape. It wasn't just about renovating a gym or settling an old score with a teacher who had doubted him. It was about something bigger, something that might finally give meaning to that letter that had left him feeling so empty all those years ago. 2 weeks later, Michael returned to Wilmington with an entourage of architects, contractors, and his personal assistant. Word had leaked out about his plan to renovate Laney High's gymnasium, and local news stations had picked up the story. Michael Jordan gives back to alma mater, the headlines proclaimed. Principal Bell arranged a meeting in the school library with the renovation team, the school board, and a few selected faculty members. The room buzzed with excitement as they waited for Michael to arrive. I still can't believe Michael Jordan is doing this for us, one teacher whispered to another. I heard he's spending millions, another replied. The door opened, and Michael walked in wearing a crisp gray suit. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Michael smiled and shook hands with everyone, thanking them for coming. Before we get started, Principal Bell said once everyone was seated, I'd like to introduce a special guest. Ms. Winifred Patterson retired from teaching math here several years ago, but she was Michael's teacher when he was a student. We invited her today because of her long service to Laney High. Miss Patterson sat at the far end of the table, looking slightly uncomfortable with the attention. She gave a brief nod of acknowledgement. Michael recognized the moment for what it was. Principal Bell had no idea about his history with Ms. Patterson. She had invited the retired teacher as a courtesy to both of them, unaware of the complicated relationship they shared. It's good to see you again, Miss Patterson, Michael said, warmly. The meeting proceeded with presentations from the architects. They showed renderings of a state-of-the-art facility that would replace the old gym. New hardwood floors, modern bleachers, expanded locker rooms, a training area with the latest equipment, and improved lighting were all part of the plan. "This is incredible," Principal Bell said, her eyes wide as she looked at the designs. "We never imagined something this comprehensive." "I want to do it right," Michael replied. "This gym shaped my life in many ways. I want it to give future students the same opportunities I had." As the meeting continued, Michael noticed Ms. Patterson, studying him with a curious expression. She said little, but he could tell she was processing everything. After the formal presentations ended, people broke into smaller groups to discuss specific aspects of the project. Michael made his way over to Ms. Patterson, who was standing alone by the library windows. "What do you think?" he asked. "It's very generous," she replied. "The students will benefit tremendously." "But," Michael prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice, "but I still don't understand why you mentioned naming it after me. That seems—" She trailed off, searching for the right word. "Unexpected?" Michael offered. "To say the least." She looked directly at him. "Michael, I was just one of many teachers you had at Laney, and not one who encouraged your basketball dreams." Michael glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot. "Would you have time to continue this conversation somewhere more private? There's a lot I'd like to say to you." Ms. Patterson checked her watch. "I suppose so. Where?" "There's a small cafe near the community center. I noticed you go there sometimes. Could you meet me there in an hour?" She nodded, curious but cautious. An hour later, they sat across from each other in the same cafe where they had met briefly before. It was quiet at this time of day, with only a few other customers scattered at distant tables. "You've kept us all in suspense, Michael," Ms. Patterson said after they ordered. "What exactly are you planning with this gymnasium?" Michael took a deep breath. This was the conversation he had been preparing for. "I want to create the Winifred Patterson Athletic Center," he said. "A facility that will support not just basketball, but education too. Study spaces, tutoring programs, college prep, basketball and education working together." Ms. Patterson's eyes widened. "You're serious about naming it after me?" "I am." "But why? I discouraged you." "You challenged me," Michael corrected her. "And now I want to challenge others." Ms. Patterson shook her head in disbelief. "Most people in your position would want to name it after themselves, or perhaps after a loved one. Your father, for instance." "My name is already on enough buildings," Michael replied. "This is different." "How so?" Michael leaned forward. "Miss Patterson, do you remember exactly what you said to me that day in the hallway, when I was cut from varsity?" She looked uncomfortable. "I remember telling you that basketball wouldn't get you anywhere in life, that you should focus on something else," she sighed. "Not my finest moment as an educator." "You said I had a good mind and should use it," Michael added. "Those words hurt at the time. But looking back, I realized there was truth in them." "Truth?" Ms. Patterson looked confused. "Michael, you became the greatest basketball player who ever lived? I was completely wrong. About basketball, yes, but not about using my mind." Michael paused as the waitress brought their drinks. Coffee for him? Tea for Ms. Patterson. "Basketball itself wasn't enough," he continued once they were alone again. "It was what basketball taught me: discipline, perseverance, leadership. That helped me succeed in business and life. In a way, you were right, that I needed more than just the sport." "That's very generous of you, Michael. But I was wrong to discourage your dream. A good teacher builds up, doesn't tear down." Michael nodded. That's why I want to name the center after you, to show that athletics and academics aren't enemies. They can complement each other, the physical and the mental, working together. Ms. Patterson was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. I'm honored, she finally said, her voice soft, but still surprised. I carried the guilt of discouraging you for years. When I saw your success, I was happy for you, but ashamed of myself. Is that why you kept the newspaper clippings about me? Michael asked. Miss Patterson looked startled. How did you know about that? The school secretary told me years ago. Said you collected everything published about me right from my UNC days. She sighed. Because I hoped I was wrong, Michael. Good teachers want their students to succeed, even when they've given advice that turns out to be misguided. I started that collection after you made that game-winning shot in the NCAA championship. I thought, maybe this boy will prove me wrong. And you did. Michael smiled, understanding filling the space between them. For the first time, he saw Ms. Patterson not as the stern teacher who had doubted him, but as a human being who had made a mistake and recognized it. So, will you accept? He asked. Will you let me name the center after you? Ms. Patterson looked at him with tears forming in her eyes. Yes, she said simply. I would be honored. They talked for another hour, about Michael's career, about her years of teaching, about how Laney High had changed and how it had stayed the same. It was the conversation they should have had years ago, not one of accusation or apology, but of understanding and respect. As they finally prepared to leave, Ms. Patterson asked, When do you plan to announce this? We'll hold a dedication ceremony once the renovation is complete, Michael said. I hope you'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world, she replied. And Michael? Thank you. Not just for the building, but for finding it in your heart to turn our story into something positive. Michael nodded. Some things take time to understand. I think we both needed those years to get here. As he watched Ms. Patterson walk away, Michael felt a sense of closure he hadn't expected. The emptiness he had felt upon receiving her letter years ago was finally filled, not with vindication or triumph, but with something much more valuable: wisdom. The renovation was completed in record time. No expense was spared as Michael's team transformed the aging gymnasium into a state-of-the-art facility that would serve generations of students. The worn wooden floor was replaced with gleaming hardwood bearing the Laney Buccaneers logo. Modern bleachers lined both sides of the court, with seating for over 1,000 spectators. The locker rooms now rivaled those of professional teams, with spacious showers and individual lockers for each player. But what truly set the facility apart were the academic spaces Michael had insisted on including. A large study center adjacent to the gym contained computers, reference materials, and quiet areas for tutoring. The walls featured quotes not just from famous athletes, but from scientists, writers, and thinkers. A constant reminder that physical and mental development went hand in hand. On dedication day, the parking lot overflowed with cars. Students, teachers, alumni, local officials, and media all gathered to witness the unveiling of the Winifred Patterson Athletic Center. Temporary seating had been set up on the new court, with a podium at center court for the speakers. Ms. Patterson sat in the front row, looking uncomfortable with the attention. She wore a simple blue dress with a pearl necklace, dressier than her usual attire, but still modest. Beside her sat some of her former colleagues, all curious about why Michael Jordan had chosen to name this magnificent facility after a math teacher. At precisely 2 p.m., Principal Bell stepped to the podium to welcome everyone. After thanking the construction team and school board, she introduced the man everyone had come to see. Michael approached the podium, handsome in a tailored suit, and the crowd erupted in applause. He waited for the noise to die down before speaking. "Thank you all for coming today," he began. "This is a special moment for Laney High School, for Wilmington, and for me personally." He spoke briefly about his time at Laney, about the lessons he had learned both on and off the court, and about his hope that this new facility would help future generations of students achieve their dreams. Some of you might be wondering why. "I named this facility after Ms. Patterson rather than myself," Michael said, addressing the question on everyone's mind. The crowd was silent, listening intently. "When I was a student here, Ms. Patterson told me basketball wouldn't get me anywhere in life." A murmur went through the crowd. "She told me to focus on something else, to use my mind instead of my athletic abilities." Ms. Patterson looked down. At her hands, embarrassed. Some people in the audience exchanged surprised glances. For years, I used those words as fuel to prove her wrong. But today, I want to thank her. Ms. Patterson looked up, surprised. "Thank you, Ms. Patterson, for giving me the chip on my shoulder that drove me to work harder than anyone else. Sometimes the people who believe in us teach us how to dream. But sometimes the people who challenge us teach us how to fight for those dreams." The crowd applauded as Michael gestured for Ms. Patterson to join him. She walked slowly to the podium, visibly moved. "There's something else you should all know," Michael continued once the applause died down. "Something I've never told anyone." Jim grew quiet again. Even the reporters leaned forward, sensing a story. "The day after Ms. Patterson told me basketball wouldn't get me anywhere, I went to the library and checked out a book on basketball strategy. I wanted to understand the game better, to be smarter about how I played. That was the beginning of my real development as a player, using my mind as well as my body." He turned to Ms. Patterson. "So, in a way, you were right. I did need to use my mind. I just found a way to use it for basketball." Ms. Patterson wiped away a tear. "I never knew," she said softly into the microphone. "Sometimes when we think people aren't listening to us, they hear more than we realize," Michael replied. "And sometimes the words that hurt us the most are the ones that help us grow the strongest." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed as Michael and Ms. Patterson stood side by side. The superstar athlete and the elderly math teacher, their unlikely connection now clear to everyone. After the ceremony, Michael hosted a private reception for school officials, key donors, and special guests. Ms. Patterson sat at a table with some of her former colleagues, still looking somewhat dazed by the day's events. "I can't believe he named it after you because you discouraged him," one teacher whispered. "Most people would have been bitter." "Michael Jordan isn't most people," Ms. Patterson replied. Later, as the crowd thinned, Michael found Ms. Patterson preparing to leave. "Was that all true?" she asked quietly. "About checking out the book on basketball strategy?" Michael nodded. "The librarian probably still remembers. I renewed it 3 times. "I had no idea," she said, shaking her head. "All these years, I thought I had only discouraged you. I never imagined my words might have pushed you to think differently about the game." "That's why I wanted to tell that story today," Michael said. "Not just for you, but for all the students who will use this facility. I want them to understand that athletics and academics aren't separate worlds. The mind and body work together." Ms. Patterson nodded. "A lesson I wish I had understood better as a teacher." "We all have more to learn," Michael replied with a smile. "Even 6-time NBA champions." As they parted ways, Michael watched Ms. Patterson walk toward the exit, her head held higher than before. The weight of guilt she had carried for decades seemed lighter now, replaced by the knowledge that her words had contributed to his success in ways neither of them had fully understood until today. Over the following months, the Winifred Patterson Athletic Center became the pride of Laney High School. Basketball participation increased by 40%, but so did academic performance among athletes. The study spaces were always full, and the tutoring program had a waiting list. Michael visited regularly, sometimes to speak to students, sometimes just to watch basketball games. On one such visit, he found Ms. Patterson in the gym after school, watching a group of freshmen practicing. "They're not very good," she observed as Michael sat beside her. "Not yet," Michael agreed, "but they're working hard." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the teenagers run drills. "There's something I've always wanted to ask you," Michael finally said. "That folder of newspaper clippings about me that you kept, why did you do that, if you thought I wouldn't succeed?" Miss Patterson looked startled. "I told you at the cafe, because I hoped I was wrong." "Yes, but there's more to it, isn't there?" Michael pressed gently. "You started that collection right after my NCAA championship game. Why not earlier? Why not when I was first drafted by the Bulls?" Ms. Patterson sighed. "Because that shot you made, that winning shot, it wasn't just athletic ability, it was poise under pressure, decision-making, intelligence. When I saw that, I realized you were using your mind the way I had always hoped my students would. You were thinking on the court." Michael nodded, a final piece of the puzzle falling into place. "So you weren't just collecting those clippings out of guilt or curiosity?" "No," Ms. Patterson admitted. "I was proud. Too proud to admit I had been wrong, but proud nonetheless." A skinny freshman missed a layup, and frustration showed clearly on his face. "That boy reminds me of you," Ms. Patterson said. "Too small." For now, but determined, Michael stood up. "Mind if I say something to them?" "They're all yours." Michael walked onto the court, and the practice immediately stopped. The teenagers stared in awe at the legend standing before them, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. One boy dropped his basketball, which bounced away unnoticed. "Coach Stevens, mind if I borrow your team for a few minutes?" Michael asked the young man, with the whistle around his neck. "Of course, Mr. Jordan," the coach stammered. "Take all the time you need." Michael stood at center court, studying the young players. They were a mix of sizes and abilities, all wearing practice jerseys in Laney's blue and gold colors. "I was cut from varsity my sophomore year," Michael told them. "Right here in this gym. I was too short, not strong enough." The boys looked at each other in disbelief. They had all heard the story, but hearing it from Michael himself made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Everyone faces rejection. Everyone gets told they're not good enough. What matters is what you do next. He glanced back at Ms. Patterson. "Sometimes the people who challenge you the most are the ones who help you grow the most." For the next 20 minutes, Michael worked with the team, showing them drills and offering tips. He paid special attention to the skinny freshman who had missed the layup, demonstrating proper form and encouraging him. "It's all about focus," Michael told the boy. "See the square on the backboard, not the rim, and believe every shot is going in." As practice ended, the players gathered their things, still buzzing with excitement. Many asked for autographs, which Michael provided patiently. After the team left, Michael and Ms. Patterson walked together through the center that bore her name. Students in the study area looked up in surprise as they passed, whispering excitedly to each other. "You were good with those boys," Ms. Patterson observed. "Have you ever thought about coaching?" Michael shook his head. "I'm better as an owner. I don't have the patience to be a coach." They stopped at a large display case in the main corridor. It contained memorabilia from Michael's career, his Laney High jersey, photos, newspaper clippings, and replicas of his NBA championship rings. Principal Bell asked for some items for this display, Michael explained. I thought it might inspire students. Ms. Patterson studied the case carefully. It's missing something, she said. What's that? Your math tests. Her eyes twinkled with humor. I seem to recall you did quite well in algebra. Michael laughed. I don't think anyone wants to see those. You'd be surprised, she replied. Young, people need to understand that even extraordinary athletes can also excel academically. As they continued their tour, they passed a classroom where a tutoring session was in progress. Several basketball players in practice uniforms sat at tables with tutors, working on homework. This is what I'm most proud of, Michael said, gesturing toward the scene. More than the fancy locker rooms or the new court. This is what will really change lives. I never expected this, Miss Patterson admitted. When you first mentioned naming the center after me, I thought it was some kind of elaborate revenge, making me forever associated with the sport I once discouraged. That would have been petty, Michael replied, and not very satisfying in the long run. They found themselves back in the gym, now empty except for a janitor sweeping the gleaming floor. Do you ever miss playing? Miss Patterson asked. Every day, Michael admitted. Nothing compares to the feeling of being on the court, in the moment, with thousands of fans watching. But time moves on. Now I get my competitive fix through business and golf. And your charitable work, Miss Patterson added. This center is quite a legacy. Michael nodded. One of many, I hope. Over the next few years, the Winifred Patterson Athletic Center became known throughout North Carolina as a model facility. School districts from across the state sent representatives to tour it and learn how they might replicate its success. The Laney High basketball teams, both boys and girls, improved dramatically with the new facilities and increased participation. The boys' team won the state championship 2 years after the center opened, their first title since Michael's playing days, but the academic success was even more impressive. Graduation rates among student athletes reached 100%. College acceptance rates soared. Students who came to the Center for Basketball often found themselves equally engaged in the academic programs. Michael continued to visit regularly. Sometimes he brought former teammates or other celebrities to speak to the students. Sometimes he came alone, sitting quietly in the bleachers to watch practice or games. Ms. Patterson became a fixture at the center despite her advancing age. She volunteered as a tutor 3 days a week, helping students with math and other subjects. Many didn't know the facility was named after her until they saw her name on the building and made the connection. On the 5th anniversary of the center's opening, Michael organized a special celebration. Former Laney High players from different eras returned for an alumni game. College scouts came to watch current players. The local news covered the event extensively. During halftime of the exhibition game, Michael and Ms. Patterson sat together, in a quiet office, away from the crowds. 5 years, Michael said. Hard to believe it's been that long. Indeed, Ms. Patterson agreed. I'm 83 now. I never expected to have such an active life at this age. You're still sharp as ever, Michael told her. The students love you. And they worship you, she replied, though I try to remind them that even Michael Jordan had to study for tests. They shared a laugh, comfortable in each other's company, in a way that would have seemed impossible decades. Earlier, Michael, Miss Patterson said, her voice growing serious. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Something that's puzzled me for years. What's that? You could have done all this, built this wonderful facility, created these programs, without involving me at all. You could have kept my discouraging words as a private motivation and never mentioned them publicly. Why didn't you? Michael was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. 2 reasons, he finally said. First, I wanted students to understand that criticism, even painful criticism, can sometimes be a gift if you use it the right way. That's an important lesson. And the second reason? Ms. Patterson prompted. I needed to forgive, Michael said simply. Not just you, for doubting me, but myself, for needing that doubt to fuel me for so long. Anger and resentment are powerful motivators, but they're also heavy burdens to carry. At some point, you have to let them go. Ms. Patterson nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Wisdom comes with age, they say, but some people never achieve it, no matter how long they live. I had good teachers, Michael replied with a smile. The sound of the buzzer indicated halftime was ending. They returned to their seats to watch the second half of the game. Though, current Laney varsity team was playing well against the alumni, showing skill and teamwork that impressed the crowd. As Michael watched, he thought about his journey, from the tearful sophomore cut from varsity to 6-time NBA champion to business, mogul to philanthropist. It had been an extraordinary path, filled with more success than he could have imagined that day in the hallway, when Ms. Patterson had told him basketball wouldn't get him anywhere in life. And yet, in a strange way, she had been right. Basketball alone hadn't been enough. It was the combination of athletic talent, mental toughness, strategic thinking, and relentless work ethic that had made him not just a great player, but a cultural icon and successful businessman. After the game ended, Michael took the microphone to address the crowd. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate 5 years of the Winifred Patterson Athletic Center, he began. When we opened this facility, I talked about the importance of both athletic and academic excellence. Today, I'm proud to announce a new scholarship program that will help Laney graduates attend college and pursue their dreams, whatever those dreams may be. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Ms. Patterson taught me an important lesson many years ago, Michael continued. She told me to use my mind. Although at the time I thought she was discouraging my basketball dreams, she was actually giving me advice that would help me succeed, not just in sports, but in life. He gestured toward Ms. Patterson, who sat in the front row. The true legacy of this center isn't the championships won, or even the college acceptances earned. It's the lesson that we are all more than any one talent or ability. We are all capable of both physical and intellectual achievement. We all have multiple paths to success. As he spoke, Michael noticed a skinny boy sitting near Ms. Patterson, the freshman who had reminded him of himself 5 years earlier. The boy was no longer quite so skinny, having grown several inches and added muscle. He listened intently to Michael's words, nodding occasionally. That boy, Michael said to Ms. Patterson later, as they watched people filing out of the gym. The one who reminded me of myself. How's he doing? Marcus, Ms. Patterson smiled. He's our top scorer now, and he maintains a 3.8 GPA. He wants to study engineering in college, but he hopes to play basketball too. The perfect embodiment of what this place stands for, Michael observed. As they walked together toward the exit, Ms. Patterson stopped at the large display case again. Among the items was a framed letter, the one she had sent Michael after his 6th championship, acknowledging she had been wrong about him. You kept it all these years, she said softly. It was important to me, Michael replied. Not because it admitted you were wrong, but because it showed you were big enough to say so. That's rare. Outside, the warm North Carolina evening welcomed them. The parking lot was still full of cars, people lingering to chat after the event. Need a ride home? Michael offered. No, thank you. My grandson is picking me up. She pointed to a young man waiting by a car. Before they parted ways, Miss Patterson took Michael's hand in both of hers. Thank you, she said simply, for turning our story into something beautiful. Michael squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for challenging me, he replied. Even when it hurt, it helped me grow. As Miss Patterson walked away, Michael watched her go, thinking about the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this point. How words spoken in a high school hallway decades ago had shaped not just his life, but the lives of countless students who would benefit from this center for generations to come. In that moment, both teacher and student understood that their shared story had come full circle. A story of doubt transformed into determination, of harsh words becoming hidden blessings, and of an unlikely partnership between education and athletics that would change young lives for years to come. What neither of them knew, what no one, except Michael, knew, was that the real reason he had named the center after Ms. Patterson had nothing to do with proving her wrong, or even forgiving her doubt. The truth was far more personal, a secret he had kept for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. But that's a story for another day. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey, showing how even difficult challenges can lead to incredible achievements. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting content like this. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family to spread kindness and awareness. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.